Hey folks, you're listening to Ideas by Elliot. Podcast. And we're here with Ideas by Elliot.
Hello. Oh, we already had a goof. No. Hello, everybody. And this is Absolute Packers Podcast with Andy Hetzel and Elliot Christensen. First pass at this. And without further ado, Elliot?
Yeah. So I think we're going to call it Absolute Packer Podcast, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I mean, you know, we still have time to change our minds.
That's the beauty of America, I think.
Yeah. So, but I think when people are looking for it, I think we're going to have it under Absolute Packer Podcast, but we might have to have it under both. I'm not really sure. We don't want to get sued by the Packers.
Yeah, they protect their brand, which is good and bad. Which I think is part of what we want to talk about, not just the football stuff. But we'll get to that. So I had some bullet points that we worked up before we got on. And the first heading I have is why we're doing this. So how you go first. Why do you want to do this? Well, you know, I've always been, since I've been in Wisconsin since 2000, I've always been a Packer fan. And I like podcasts. And, actually just to kind of put it in a nutshell, I've tried to find a subject matter where I could come up with a podcast just to do a podcast and talk about things that I like. And what's funny is, I'm a musician. I'm a super creative person, but I'm also a huge sports fan and a huge Packer fan. So this was kind of an excuse to talk about my favorite team, and that's the Packers. So it was to try something new and to talk about something that I take seriously as both a fan and, just as a resident of Green Bay, Wisconsin.
And I don't actually even recall how we kind of got started on this. I don't know if I asked you or if you asked me.
It might have been kind of somewhere in between where I knew that you did podcasts in Green Bay with some other, political ventures and whatnot. And part of me was saying, Elliot has some history and he has some knowledge of how to do a podcast. So I'll connect with him. And that's literally how I kind of brought about it. And I recall in the past you had mentioned that you wanted to do a podcast potentially about the Packers, so my ears perked up.
Yeah, and I love the Packers. I live in Green Bay, right? I wouldn't call myself and you always refer to the X's and O's. I wouldn't refer to myself as an X's and O's expert. But I feel like, boy, if we're going to be in Green Bay and we're doing a podcast and we're not doing something about the Packers, I think that people outside of Green Bay would look at us very strangely.
I would agree.
So, I hate to make it seem like it's inevitable, but I feel like it was sort of inevitable to try to, kind of go down this path.
Yeah, makes total sense. And, to your point, it's I know some X's and O's. I have some knowledge of football in terms of scheme and in terms of, when I watch the game on TV. I don't have the all 22, which for people who don't know, the NFL puts out for every game, every week, film that shows all 22 players, because there's obviously 11 on offense and 11 on defense, that shows everything that's happening. I don't have access to that. There's a lot of other people out there who are very, very serious who do.
I like to think that I have kind of a cursory, kind of a football for dummies mentality. So I understand some schemes and I understand some things I'm looking at, but at the end, or at the end of the day, when I'm watching a game, I'm still a fan. And, if somebody screws up a play, I get mad and I want to throw something at the TV.
Do you think that's enough? Are we good enough for this? Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. And I want to kind of address that later. The part where maybe we aren't good enough. Then I have this other heading that says why us, right? So yeah. Why do you think like anybody would care what you have to say about any of this?
Here's an interesting thing. So a lot of people who are Packer fans and they're from the Wisconsin area, they're what I call lifers. They've lived in Wisconsin their entire life, whether it's Green Bay, whether it's Milwaukee, whether it's whatever. I've actually spent my time all over the country. Funny anecdote. I lived in Georgia in a suburb of Atlanta, and I lived right across the street from the neighborhood where Brett Favre lived when he was a player with the Falcons. Yes, the Falcons in 1991. So long story short, when I moved to Green Bay in 2000, there was kind of a fork in the road. You could either be all in with the Packers or you can be kind of all out. You can't really be in between. And I made the decision. I said, the Packers are one thing that Green Bay has that you can really rally around. So I made a conscious decision to say, hey, I'm going to be all in with the Packers and I'm going to learn about football. I'm going to learn about the history. I'm going to learn about the players and all those kinds of things, which was, I think it was the right decision. There's a lot of good things that the Packers do for the community. And it all kind of culminated in 2010 when they went to the Super Bowl. And I had the great opportunity to actually go see the Packers play in the Super Bowl in Dallas and see them win. And that was incredible. So around that time and since then, I've become even more in tune with all things Packers because the feeling you get when you win a Super Bowl with your hometown, where you live, is incredible, especially in the smallest market in professional sports.
So were you not a football fan?
I was. I went to school at the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia, which is about an hour north of Atlanta. And Bulldog football, the Georgia Bulldogs are religion. You could say it's kind of like Green Bay, only in college instead of the NFL. But I knew a little bit about football, but I didn't care that much about it. I'm an artsy guy. I'm very right-brained. I'm into visual arts. I'm into performing arts. I'm a musician. I love tattoos. Anything creative I'm into. And at that point in my life, I wasn't really knowledgeable or really didn't care a whole lot about football, whether it was college or pro or whatever. So I guess when you get into a community like Green Bay, things change though. And I think it's really interesting because in a community as small as Green Bay, the passion and everything is crazy. It's almost like a college atmosphere. So I just embraced it.
Nice. So I have for my little bullet point on here that my job is to keep you on topic. And I mean that sort of sarcastically, obviously. But I think you just have like this fountain of knowledge, I guess, that you want to get out. And
I would agree.
Just keep me on topic in different directions and all at once. Yeah, I mean, so, but I don't. When I'm talking about this stuff, I feel like I'm very focused and I don't have as much knowledge. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's a big part of it. Right. So, and I don't know, maybe I do. I'm one of those lifers that you dismissed. So
some lifers, I should say.
I don't know. We'll see. So I don't know. Hopefully that's enough. But I guess my goal is I don't really want it to be about me and you.
I kind of want this to be about other people and about the whole community, about the business, about the Packers, about the games. I mean, after the games, I'm sure we'll have a recap of some kind. And also, I hope we have some call-ins. So I have this big topic, and I think we'll spend a little time on this, what we're going to do. So overall, we would like to keep this to 30 minutes because we want to get right to the point. And I think it's better to leave something, leave, if anybody really loves what we're doing, I think it's better to leave them wanting more than to kind of overstay our welcome. Yeah. And so, and we'll see how that goes. Maybe we will have to adjust that, but I think, that 30-minute thing is good. If you live in Green Bay or even Milwaukee, a lot of commutes are 30 minutes. I think it's a good length. So we are going to talk football, and you always talk about the X's and O's.
Yeah.
So
from the talk
elaborate a little bit on
X's and O's. I would say that is, when you break down what happened during the game, you had elaborated that we talk about, the business of football, the community and things like that. And I think that's all great. And I would actually like to spend more time on that. But I think there's also value in talking about, we'll say what happened in the previous game or whatnot, because ultimately, if the Packers are a successful football team on the field, they're a successful football team off the field, meaning, financially, with the fans and just with merchandise and just with the community in general. So there's some people who have lived during the dark days post Lombardi, after the 67 championship, up until when Brett Favre arrived in 92. And, there's an interesting entanglement between, the success of the team and the success of the city. Ultimately, you have to have a good product on the field. So I think there's value in that.
Yeah. So when I talk about not having a lot of Packer knowledge, it's because that's when I grew up. So I was born in the early... I was born in the early 70s, and there's nothing, and people were still Packer fans. It amazed me, and I feel this this fair weather fan guilt now, because I feel like when I was in high school and earlier, I feel like why wasn't I more of a Packer fan? But the Packers were pretty terrible up until I was in high school. And then Brett Favre came along and Reggie White, and we things just turned around pretty quickly. And then they've really been pretty much pedal to the metal since. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that other times. But I don't know. That's where I have this, I feel like this big knowledge gap, because I really did not care about football really until
I hear
Super Bowl in the 90s.
I think,
or a little bit before that.
Like I said, I think, in a nutshell, if you have a successful team on the field, you have a successful team market and everything off the field. That's where essentially it starts. If you don't have a good product on the field, you have junk off the field.
Yeah, so and off the field, holy moly! Like the whole the Titletown district, and I just drove by there just a little while ago. That's why I was even a little late getting started.
And they're building
and, they have that new tailgate, whatever they're calling the tailgate center. I don't know.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
It's exciting, but at the same time, it's almost crazy. Like they have it all behind, the fencing and all that. And it's like, what's going on behind there? And it's, in any event, we know it'll be good. Yeah. It'll be a net positive, but it's, yeah.
That's by design, though. You're an Apple fan, you know that's part of the appeal of it, right? Like they unveil it, and then it's even better than if you. And
to a certain extent, they're trying to model,
unveil piece by piece.
What Indianapolis did. They're a slightly larger market, but if you develop the area around the stadium and make it a destination around the stadium, you should be able to bring in more revenue and more excitement. And let's be honest, their goal is the draft. They want to host the draft, and I'll leave it at that. Stay on topic.
Yeah, we definitely have to talk more about that later. So a couple of other things that you mentioned while we were kind of going through our bullet points here. You kind of made it clear that you don't want to have any
I don't know. I use the word bashing.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty connected on Twitter with a lot of other
tell
bloggers
me a little bit about what
and a lot of
your
other
thoughts were on
people
that.
who follow the Packers, whether they're, directly affiliated or they're just fans and whatnot. And I mean, there's plenty of bad things to say about players, about the management, about all things, intertwined in that. And let me tell you, there's certain things I agree with within there, but at the same time, I don't think it serves, the best purpose for what this particular podcast is going to do. Because if you want to talk about, the business, the community and all those kinds of things, I just don't think it's going to serve us well. There's plenty, as you know, somebody once said that the native tongue of the internet is sarcasm. There's plenty of that out there. And I think we can try and stick to more of the real positives. It'll serve us well. I am too. But I
don't know. I'm a little sarcastic at times. That's true. And I am gonna drop the phone number right now, but I'm gonna leave it again at the end if anybody's paying attention and they don't have the capacity to jot it down or call right away. But I want to encourage anybody listening, whatever aspect of the Packers you want to talk about, we kind of want to talk about it too. And worst cases, we're not going to use what you send in. That's the worst thing. The best thing is hopefully we can make you sound good and talk through some of the points that you bring up, whatever they might be, whether it's about a game or whatever, or even about some of the things that we mentioned today. So anyway, that number is 508-535-5468. And I want to just stress real quick that is not a live call-in. So like if you call right now, we're recording this a few days before you're hearing it. So
it's a good caveat. Yes,
it's not going to be live.
Good disclaimer.
You're not even hearing it, so you're not calling. Does that make sense? Can you explain that better? Because I
what
had a little bit of
means
trouble
is when you call that number,
the political podcast trying to explain like the not live call-in aspect.
Yep. And if you say very nice things about us,
play that back as part of the
you will be
next
moved up
episode.
in front of the line. If not, you will be deleted immediately, or maybe not. I don't know. Exactly.
See, that's the sarcasm. See, yeah. No. So, I really don't know how you feel about that.
I completely agree with the fact that nobody should agree. No.
It's not interesting if everybody just agrees. So. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So again, I'll repeat that number in a little bit. But please, if you're listening to this at all, whoever the hell you are, you should call in. And if nothing else, just, say Andy should just be here by himself. Elliot should hit the road, whatever you want to do, whatever you have to do, just please call in. I think that's going to be crucial to what we're trying to do here. So enough of that. The other aspect that is, I think it'd be pretty boring. No offense, if it was just the two of us. I think that's so part of it is the call-ins, but the other piece is getting some guests.
Well, I think so when it comes to bringing in guests, I'd like to look at the full spectrum.
Guests.
You can bring in people who are knowledgeable about X's and O's, about games, about whatever else. But I'm a pretty sarcastic, silly person, so I think we could even bring in people who make fun of things, and they're not just shills or pandering to the Packers organization. And by no means are we saying that we're trying to bring down the Packers, because let me make this very clear, and I have said this to many people. I would consider the Packers as a sports brand to be the number one international sports brand in the world. And yes, I realize how serious that sounds and how over the top it can sound, because you have Manchester United and these other organizations and whatnot. But the Packers, in terms of a brand, are it's hard to quantify what they actually mean. Yeah.
Well, at the very least, I think anybody would agree they're in the top 5, right? So there's the Yankees, the Cowboys, the Packers,
potentially,
and Manchester United. I don't know who else is maybe the Cubs now. You know, maybe they're an international brand, but like I don't know who else would be.
Bryce Harper, he's a little bit.
I struggled to name the Washington Nationals. I struggled,
but I think the power of again, the Packers as not only a USA brand, but as an international brand, it is incredible, what they can actually do. I mean, you have the NFL that's starting to get more popular in the UK, and I mean, some of that's just being force fed by the NFL, the league. But let me put it this way: if you went over to Europe and you said, "I live in Green Bay," chances are somebody would say Packers, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, and some people would say, "Oh, that's pathetic," and I would say, "I disagree." Think about some of the quality of athletes, the quality of the brand that you're talking. Aaron Rodgers is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Brett Favre is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Right. Well, and by comparison, if you said you're from Milwaukee,
who became
I don't know what the first thing to come to mind would
and
be.
He hated it, and he wanted to get traded out. Yeah, really. Other teams are fair game. No, I'm kidding.
I thought we weren't going to do any bashing. But okay, so what I was going to say is 20 years ago, if you would have said you're from Milwaukee, somebody would have said, "Oh, is that where Jeffrey Dahmer's from?"
It's
so
the amount of brand equity.
I don't know. I mean, in Europe, they don't know what the Brewers are.
And worldwide,
they don't know what the Bucks are.
And I think everybody, locally, regionally, nationally, should take note. And I think it's something to be very proud of.
Okay, so do you have any give me your top 5? I think you don't have to name names, but even like a category. What are your top dream
probably
guests?
Be somebody from the Packers board of directors, and that's just to pick their brain and maybe get some juicy tidbits. I realize that may be somewhat of a pipe dream. Yes, because I'm very interested in the inner workings.
So above a player or a coach, you'd rather have somebody from the board of directors?
I love the football side of it, but let's be honest, the football side of it is what you see on Sunday is kind of a microcosm of the machinations of the corporate, the team itself. So I'm more interested in things above the Ted Thompsons and the Mike McCarthys. I would say some writers and or beat writers that are affiliated with either local or regional newspapers. I think that would be knowledgeable. Although Bob McGinn, he's been retired, forced out, or something like that. But super fans, but as Elliot said, it's one thing for us to talk to each other, but we also want to talk to other people that have vantage points that are different, but in relation to the Packers. Mm-hmm.
So if a super fan either called into 508-535-5468, or if they sent us an email or contacted us some way, you'd want to have them on? I would too. Like, I guess I consider myself, and I don't know, probably average for Green Bay, honestly. But
I would agree.
Above average.
Agree. No, I would agree. I would agree. And like I said, I'm spoiled. The reason I'm a super fan is
I think you're
when you reach the pinnacle,
fan.
when you attend the Super Bowl, and you witness your team win the Super Bowl in this era of the NFL. And when I say this era, winning in 2010 versus winning in 1996, it really might as well be two different eras, because you have, social media, you have the money that's exponentially that bigger, all those kinds of things. It's different. It really is. Sure.
Yeah, well, it's both bigger and smaller at the same time, and I'm sure that we'll dig more into that going forward too. So, do you have any other thoughts
Sure.
on what we're going to do?
I would say that, I like to look at things in thirds.
Molded
I
by
think
the
you mentioned
news
this earlier, where you
molded
have,
by the games and
you
by the
talk
season.
about the Packers in terms of X's and O's, and then you talk about the Packers as a business in relation to the community or even the league. And then you talk about the Packers in relation to the community and what it means there. And that's kind of open-ended, but the X's and O's is interesting, but so many people do that. I think if we can kind of figure out a way to tie into these other, things that are more insular and they're more close to home, for lack of a better term, I think that'd be an interesting angle to play from.
Okay. I don't have anything else on any of that.
Yes.
So again, I want to reiterate, it'll be a lot more interesting next week if we can have some call-ins. So and we're still working out exactly when we're going to schedule our recording, but I think we're going to try to at least get some sort of a regular rhythm out there so that we can allow people to kind of know when they're going to be heard on the air, so to speak. So again, that the dial-in number, the call-in number is 508-535-5468. You can call in, leave a voicemail. You can, if you hated what you said, you can do a do-over. You can call us up and say, scratch that, whatever. There's no pressure. You can write it down ahead of time, call in. It's a voicemail. It's just like you're calling your mom up and you're leaving her a pleasant voicemail, but it doesn't have to be pleasant. It can be whatever. And also, if you're more sophisticated and you want to send us a sound clip or you want to email us, that all that stuff is obviously fine too. So all I have left is
the call to action.
How people can hear this stuff. You have anything else you want to say before I kind of get into that? Yeah. Oh, the call to action. You're a born marketer. So, and jump in if I miss anything.
Code for not done yet.
But we are in the midst of, which means we have to get that started. I was setting up a little website called absolutepacker.com. And on there will be links to all the places you can hear the show. Now, I understand the irony of that because I'm saying this to people who are hearing it, so you know how to hear it. So the crucial part about all of that is if you did hear this, if you're hearing me talk right now, we need you to share that. We need you to share how you got this episode. We need you to share this boring little intro episode just to kind of spread the word. And we're going to try to have it available everywhere. It'll be on YouTube. It'll be on Facebook. It'll be on Twitter. It'll be on iTunes, of course. It's a podcast. It'll be on Stitcher. It'll be on all the major podcast platforms where things are available. But if you don't know what any of that means, you can go to absolutepacker.com. You can also go to Absolute Packer Podcast on Facebook. I'm going to double check that it's actually Absolute Packer Podcast.
Yep.
I think it is. And I think there again, we don't have, when you start from zero and you don't have any fans or whatever it's called now, people that like your page, and you can't give a short name for it. So I will put links to some of these things in our notes. Right. So we have Absolute Packer Podcast. Yeah. Okay. So we in the on Facebook, it's called Absolute Packer Podcast, and on Twitter, there's
pandering
name,
is fine.
I will have links to all that in the notes.
It's an age old thing.
We'll try to get the word out, but we need some help doing that. Am I begging too much? Okay.
Okay, so we're at 28 and a half minutes. Got any closing thoughts? Otherwise, we can wrap
closing
it. I don't
know
if we're gonna have any like closing.
What's funny is every year
there might be some on here. There might be some
Las
different
Vegas
stuff in
or
the
whatever
future.
says Packers are in the top 3 to hit the Super Bowl, and that's great, but they need to get there because I went in 2010 and I haven't been back since then, and it's pissing me off. All right.
I think that's a good place to leave it. So I'm going to hit the stop button now.
Podcast.
I know, right?